Well, with the beginning of the college football season starting up next weekend, I thought I would jump right into my college football preview videos. Starting off with the Auburn Tigers, the 2003 SEC champions, as you can tell by my t-shirt here. And to say that I underestimated this team last year would be a pretty big, gross understatement. And if you don't believe me, I will have the description in the description box. I will have my video from my 2003 preview. Oh, excuse me, 2013. And this was a team that came off of a 3-9 season in 2012, and they fired their head coach. And then they went and hired the architect of the 2010 national championship team, and Gus Malzahn, who was the offensive coordinator on that team. This was a team that I thought would be lucky to make a bowl game last year. I will have that in that video. That's kind of one of the things I talked about. That they'd be lucky to go like 6-6 or so and eke themselves into a minor bowl game. Little did I know that this team was going to come 13 seconds away from winning the national championship against Florida State. Well, sometimes you have to make your own luck, and sometimes it just kind of happens. But in the last two games before the SEC championship game, they pulled a couple of rabbits out of their hat, let me tell you. You had the miracle of Jordan Hare on a 4th and 18 pass. Nick Marshall throws a bomb down to Ricardo Lewis, which ends up going off of a couple of Georgia defenders, and he ends up going into the end zone for a 73-yard touchdown. And you probably thought you couldn't top that, right? Wow. Yeah. Well, no, then you had the epic ending of probably the most epic Iron Bowl in history when Alabama goes for a 57-yard field goal, and Chris Davis just happens to be waiting 9 yards back in the end zone, and all he does is return it 109 yards for a touchdown and win the most epic Iron Bowl in the game's storied history. And that was just to get themselves into the SEC championship. But enough about last year's team. Let me start talking about this year's team. There are some needs on this team that need to be replaced. Most notably on offense, you had left tackle Greg Robinson, who was drafted 2nd overall by the St. Louis Rams. And also the single-season leading rusher in the history of Auburn football, and Trey Mason, who was drafted by the St. Louis Rams as well. And then on defense, you had Dee Ford, who was drafted late in the late first round by the Kansas City Chiefs. But offensively, this team would seem to be loaded, and it all begins with senior quarterback Nick Marshall, who returns for his final season. After he counted for over 3,000 yards last year and 26 touchdowns. And to replace Trey Mason, it's probably going to be more of a committee this year. You had running backs like Cameron Artis-Payne and Corey Grant, who both rushed for over 600 yards last year. And they'll also be joined by their top recruit, a five-star prospect named Rock Thomas, who will be vying for playing time as a true freshman. Also, they have a very deep receiving core led by the return of Sammy Coates, who caught 7 touchdowns and caught for over 900 yards last year. Then you also have the hero of the Georgia game and Ricardo Lewis. You got Quan Bray coming back, tight end C.J. Uzomah. And they also got the top JUCO prospect in the nation, and Daquille Williams, who is a big, tall, rangy wide receiver. He's about 6'4", and he should figure in the mix right away. Then you got some of the returners on defense. You got Gabe Wright at defensive tackle. He's returned for his senior season, along with Carl Lawson, who got to play quite a bit as a freshman last year, and he looks to replace Dee Ford at one of the defensive end spots. Then you got returners in the secondary such as Jonathan Mincy, you got Jermaine Whitehead, and you got Robinson Threezy. Okay, as far as what I think about this team this year, they were either very lucky last year or they're being set up for long-term success. I kind of think towards the latter. I think they're going to be set up more for long-term success as as opposed to having just a really lucky year and catching lightning in a bottle last year. But however, their schedule is not a very easy one this year. I mean, they have a non-conference road game against Kansas State in Manhattan, and that will not be an easy game. Then also they have to travel to Alabama and to Georgia. And you think those teams are going to be looking for revenge against Auburn this year? Gee, I wonder. As far as what I think about them this year, I think worst case scenario, they finish in the middle of the SEC West and they'll go to some bowl game. But I think best case scenario, I think this is a team that they are loaded on offense. They may have some questions on defense, but their offense is so loaded that sometimes when you have such a great offense, it can kind of mask some of your deficiencies on defense. But as far as their best case scenario, I think this is a team that they could win the SEC West again and then get into the SEC championship. And if they could win that, they could find themselves right in the middle of the 14 playoff, and that's something I think is very doable for this team. War Eagle.